Hey y'all, it's Z Infante, and you are watching episode 4 of Raise the Gain featuring Kathreen Khavari. Kathreen's journey to voiceover, as you will see, is unconventional, is something so special, something so inspiring, and one that's so filled with heart and family. So I'm really excited that you get to watch our conversation. If you enjoy what you watch, please make sure you like and subscribe to @Raise the Gain on YouTube and to @ZR Infante on Instagram. Love ya. Here it goes. For those watching, this is Kathreen Khavari. I've got that correct, yes?
Absolutely. It's actually a
Mwah.
miracle because people
Yes.
don't off the first. So thank
Well,
you.
of course. Well, something that I've learned about you, just from finding out more in the world and what you've put out into the world, is that you're a very straightforward person, right? Even the way that you spell out the way you pronounce your name on Instagram, like that, it's very straightforward. And I really appreciate that about you.
I appreciate that you paid attention to that because I feel like nobody notices that.
you
I
know,
can't tell you.
I will tell you, I'm a person who has learned how important authenticity is, right? And both from struggling, coming out as a queer kid, and I've run for board of education here in my hometown. Like, I've done a lot of service in my life, and it's helped me find more of who I am. And I'm wondering a little bit about you and growing up, and like, did you find yourself being of service? Because I know you studied medicine, public health. So I'm wondering what inspired that, what like got you into thinking and caring about other people's well-being.
So that's very generous of you. I don't know that I had gotten into that for that reason, if I'm being honest. What got me into public health was the field of infectious diseases. I saw the movie Outbreak as a sixth grader, and I was like almost walked out of the movie theater because I was so terrified. And I was like, this is crazy. What is this disease that like would just take over a town and then the world, and it was just like it was mind blowing to me. And I was also kind of like a hypochondriac as a kid. And like always there was like this billboard in my hometown in Oakland, this giant billboard with like two yellow eyes, and it was like, do you have hepatitis? And I was like, oh my god, do I have hepatitis? I don't know. It was like very it was like a scary world for me. So I just, because I was like always afraid of germs, and I think this is like a generational issue that I have, because recently I realized that like my grandmother, my great grandmother, they all have like a like germaphobe, like extreme germophobia. I'm like a better version of that. But so I believe it or not. So I really got into infectious diseases because of, again, the movie Outbreak, and then later on I read The Hot Zone and I was like obsessed. But it was more like I need to know my enemy. So that's
Mm.
sort of how it went into. It was like my enemy is freaking me out on a daily basis. Like I need to, and then I remember learning about like the plague in the seventh grade and the Black Death that took over Europe and destroyed whatever portion of the population. And I was just like, oh my god. So it was like this sick fascination, but also like I gotta know my enemy. And so when I went into public health, it was like when I got into UC Berkeley, I transferred from community college. I was like really intent on going to Berkeley because I had friends that got in, and I was like, I got to prove something to myself. Like I need to get into.
Mhm.
So when I got in, they had just reopened their public health um, public health BA program, and you could like do like a, I think it was like a specializing. They had all these like great infectious disease classes, and I was like, cool, I'm doing that. So then I did that, loved it. Took theater classes while I was at UC Berkeley, and like, of course, loved that. But I was like, oh,
Yes.
let me just be practical with my life, and went straight into my master's program in London. And I wanted to move to London because of Mary Poppins. So I always say a lot of my big life decisions were movies.
Justified. I hear that. Yes.
And don't regret it, by the way. Like, so happy I did it. Like, Mary Poppins was on point. And while I was there, again, really loved my infectious disease classes. But I came back, and I was like watching theater, like a lot of theater while I was there. Because in England, they give you, in London, they give students like really great, like discounted theater tickets, like really great
Mhm.
seats too. And so I was just like there, and I was like obsessed with all the shows and the performances. And I was like, my school was next to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I would like pass by there every day, and I'd
Mhm.
be like, oh, that's where I want to be. So while I had like this fascination and like love for the infectious diseases as a kid, I had wanted to be a performer. And so when I came back, I worked in public health. I would read medical charts and like cry almost like every time, because it was like somebody came in with something, and then
Mhm.
like whatever it was, like they may have died, they may have gotten worse, and like every time I would open a chart, I'd be like sobbing at the end of it. My mom was like, don't worry, you'll get desensitized eventually. And then like
But how is
two and
that
a
sustainable? Right, right.
well, also like I never got desensitized. Like 2.5 years later, I may have gotten worse. And I was just like reading these and like crying. And I was like, I can't, this isn't, I'm actually not built for this. Like I'm good with blood and guts. Like I'm fine with like gross things. I can't, like human pain and
Mhm.
suffering and seeing like families suffer and having to like be confronted with that on like a daily basis. I was just like, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah. Those
So
realities are so being confronted. So I had cancer when I was in high school, and it was such a, a different situation, but it was such a stark difference from my life. I'm living my life, da, 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 and then this thing happens and it turns your life upside down, right? And to think that, there was the pursuit of something that was, difficult and uncomfortable, and to hear you say, right, that like your dreams were right in front of you with the Royal Academy being right there. It's like signs all around. Because I remember, for me, it's been education, right? Like I've been an actor since I was 10 years old. Like I have known nothing but it since then. And I mean, like, sure, I worked at Dairy Queen, do you know what I mean? Like I know other things. But it was in college that I recognized I was interested in education, right? And like getting more into that side of myself. And I wanted to continue along where you were going, because I felt like you were on a track about the theater and performance. So I'm just sprinkling in like, when did you know that this was, that performing arts, that voiceover, on camera work was something that, like, I don't know, was like sprinkling down on you like glitter, you know?
um I mean, I had wanted to do it from a very young age. My dad and I, our bonding was through movies. He would take me to the movies all the time, and since from like a very young age, that was like our favorite. We would go to the movies, we would rent movies. It was just like movie, and he would always know all the actors' names. So I always knew all the actors' names, and I was like one of the only kids in school. And I thought everybody was that way, but I was like usually one of the only kids in school that like knew everybody's who all the performers were. And I really was always so moved by movies, more so than TV. I mean, I was a 80s 90s kid, so I watched like a lot of television.
Mm-hmm.
There was no regulation there in my life, which there probably should have been, but so I consumed a ton, and I always wanted to perform. And I used to tell, my dad was like a very he was one of those people that like, could get things done if you really wanted to, like if you really put his mind to it. And I'd like, for the longest time, I think it was like late elementary school and definitely middle school, I'd be like, Dad, be my manager, like help me break into this. And he'd be like, I'm not going to be the one to throw you to the sharks of Hollywood. Like you grow up and you do it on your own. I'm not doing that. And I'd be like, but you'd be so good at it, please. And he was just like, I'm not going to be responsible for this. So when I had graduated from my well, so the deal was, when I was in high school, that my parents were like, okay, get your degree in something unrelated, and then when you graduate you can do whatever you want to do. So I was like, all right, I got my degree in public health. And then I was like, well, that's a way safer route than becoming an actor. And I was like, just put that to the side. Like, what are the chances that you're going to make money as an actor? And then I went straight into my master's program. And then I called my mom from my master's program when I was in London. And I was like, Mom, this isn't going away. Like, it's like really it's eating me up. I like did karaoke night one night at my grad school, and someone was like, "Oh my God, you're in the wrong field. You should be a performer." And I was like, like every time someone said that to me, it was like my heart would break a little bit because I'd be like, it's true. Um, so my mom was like, "All right, well, you got your degrees. Come home and do whatever the hell you want to do." And I was like, "All
Wow.
right." So I came home. I worked in public health, and I would take classes nights and weekends, for like theater classes. I would do whatever like local theater I could do. I signed up with like I finally got like an agent at some point. So then that's kind of how that all started. And then at some point I was like, I need to leave the Bay. Like this isn't. There's no real industry here. I mean, there's some great theater there, but aside from that, so then I moved to New York, and then that sort of began like the real journey into because then eventually I quit my job in public health and did this full time, and then I fell into writing. Writing wasn't on the agenda at all. I had written for like all my school papers um, from high school into uh, well, except for grad school, but high school and then community college and then UC Berkeley. I was writing for publications, but it was always like technical writing. It was always like factual. It was never creative writing. So I never thought I would end up in writing at all. People would be like, write your own stuff, write your own stuff. And I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to. I want to act. That's the whole point. And so
Mm-hmm.
that sort of happened along the way.
So it was like the glitter just rather than sprinkling down was like a gust of wind. Do you know what I mean? Like it sounds like you were swept away from this medical field and the pursuit of medicine. And I love that your mom gave you that opportunity. And it's interesting to think like my dad, for instance, I do a lot of theater professionally these days. He was, and of course, my dad's always like, what movie are you going to be in next?" And I love him for it because I know he believes in me. But there's also that sort of what's next. You know, like what is going to put food on your table and a roof over your head. And
Totally.
I appreciate that. I appreciated that practicality from my parents growing up.
Yeah.
And even now in my life, you know, like I find myself uh disillusioned by the theater and more entranced by voiceover in particular.
Mm.
And something that's really cool about you is that you've like, I think I can identify with this is like you found a world in which you work in many mediums, right? And on the note of writing, I'm wondering like from the projects that you've worked on so far, and or are working on currently, what have you learned about yourself through your writing?
Yeah, writing has taught me about what's going on in here in ways that I like didn't even know was possible. Um, there's something about putting it like you don't know where like a lot of times you don't know where it's going to go when you start the writing process. And also like it does evolve over time. Like I started writing sketches. I was doing sketches for a while. Then I went into like short. Then I did like pilots, and then it was like feature. And I never saw myself going in that direction at all. I was just like, well, I'll just do sketches all the time. But your voice does evolve and it does change. But I also um, found that like the thing that I'm probably there's a theme that is recurring in my writing usually, and it's like there's a well, one of the things is like the grappling with like the idea of impermanence
Mm.
and and change and like adjusting to that like community connection, the ways where that we try to find connection with one another, um the desperate like need to have that in our lives, um and and just characters. Like I love one of my favorite things, the thing that like ends up inspiring me the most is like I love walking. I used to live in New York, and I loved I got so much good material just like walking through the streets of New York and like overhearing conversations and hearing the things that people say and being like, this person exists, like this is
Mm.
crazy. And I just like write things down. I don't feel like I have those opportunities as much in LA, just because there's no walking culture here. And also like there is a certain like, I love LA for a lot of reasons, but there's also like a certain homogeneity that happens here because of the predominant industry, which is like Hollywood. And so there's like a lot of the same sort of archetypes. I just feel like I see like myself over and over and over again in like different capacities, which is
Mhm.
fine. It's nice to see other people doing that too. But one of my favorite things to do is to like get out and go to other cities and like observe people and extract, characters from people. And so I think that's one of like the main things that ends up being like a morsel of an idea for me
Yes,
that
yeah.
I can expand on.
It's like seeing the world really. It's interesting. I think of people who are watching who are like in a landlocked state, or people who live in the Bronx that have never left the Bronx. You know what I mean? Like that is a reality for a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
something that I've learned and that I hear you saying is your art has brought you around the world, as well as your experience, in education. So I'm a big proponent of education, whether that's higher education or you're getting a certificate or you're learning how
Absolutely.
to work heavy machinery, like
For
go
sure.
pursue knowledge. And something that you also put out in the world, in terms of knowledge, is advocacy, right? You do a lot of advocacy and a lot of activism, particularly, correct me if I'm wrong, for women of color, uh, for people who are disadvantaged in many respects, internationally as well as in this country. And I just find it, I can really identify with that. Why I ran for the Board of Education was I saw, my town had its first Black Lives Matter protest during the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I'm sorry, what town are you in?
I live in Roselle Park, New Jersey. It's a square mile, in
Oh wow.
it's like 45 minutes outside of the city.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and New York City. And I grew up here. It's wild. I never thought that I would come back and live in my hometown. But then I met my fiance on Grinder. He was on the
Mm-hmm.
grid, and I was like, oh my God, he's so cute. I'm gonna spend
Mm-hmm.
the rest of my life with him. Um, so I found myself being active in my community, and I'm wondering, within your communities, what keeps you going? Because it's hard out there. You know what I mean? Like it is there is so much anger and frustration in the world. And as we, you know, begin to wrap up our time together today, because I feel like this is just an introduction for you and I, and I'm looking forward to getting to know
Mm-hmm.
you more outside. I'm wondering what, whether that's your VO roles that feel like activism, because you play such dynamic characters. Ms. Marvel is like mind blowing. Like, what an incredible experience to be able to play that role, and for
Oh
young
yeah.
women to see that role. And then look up who it's being played by and see you. It's like, oh, it's such a magnificent thing, because we come from what was such a homogenized industry that, still has its moments. But representation matters, which is a conversation I had with Caitlin Kinnan in my last interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what, taking all of the soup that I just poured into your bowl, because that was a lot. Um, what is that? What keeps you going?
Um, I don't. Okay, well, what keeps me going in life is that I think the beauty that rears its head in between the muck um, is is enough for me at this juncture in life to sort of like keep it going and be
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, it's there. You gotta pull it out, gotta show it. And I think also when I connect to like a beautiful piece of work or a work that like really makes me feel connected to humanity and to the artist and to other people, though, like I'm reading a book right now that I just really love, and it's called Martyr. And it's just like there's like so much humanity in it, and there's so much that like you can relate to. Anything that makes me feel like less alone in the world, less alone in like pain or struggle or sadness, like less alone, and knowing that like everyone is sort of in this together, um and like seemingly through no like control of our, like everyone has their own spiritual beliefs. I don't recall asking to be here, and so like as far as I know, like I was just thrown into this. And
Yes.
and I don't know how everyone else feels, but the way I see it is that a lot of us are just here, and there's something really lovely about those moments where you can connect with other people and be like, this is crazy, right? Like we're here doing this wild life thing. I guess we'll be in this together. um Anything that I can like, that I can get out of within me to put out there so that someone else is like, yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
um and at the very least makes me feel like I can express whatever's like churning within. um at this stage is like, it that's the thing that really does keep me going. That's part of what keeps me going. I think the other thing is just like, I mean, within the industry, just knowing that like it, like as we have made progress, a lot of progress. Like the auditions that I was getting when I first started were like an abomination to anything Middle Eastern. It was just so disheartening and like messed up. And there were times where I would like do an audition and then like cry afterwards and be like, why did I do that audition? It was awful. Like, what the, who was writing these characters? Like, it was just so disheartening. And to see that like within the past decade, things have evolved, they have changed, they have got better. I don't know what it's going to look like moving forward, but I think there's enough people that have like gotten in that I'm hoping like we're all holding the doors open and letting everyone else in too.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's just been so much good content the past decade because like the floodgates opened and people bum rushed and they were like, I'm gonna make content, like I'm gonna put
Mm-hmm.
some stuff out there that like nobody else has done before, and like someone's gonna relate to it, and they do. Like those things are all very uplifting and motivating. Uh, I'm hoping that that continues. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I still have stuff that I want to, stories I want to tell. There's still things that I need to get out. And I think there will be as long as I'm alive. And that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of what keeps me going right now.
That is,
And also, it's really fun.
yes, yes, we get to have a blast. I love that this conversation has gotten to such a heart centered place, because like something that I aspire for Raise the Game to do is to meet, is for me to meet people like you, and for us to go out into the world and say, I'm going to do something differently, or I feel inspired by the conversation I had to do something differently. You know, to, like you said, to like hold the doors open for people to come. I can only say I wish the world for you. And
You
I
too.
I trust, thank you. I trust that the universe will provide, as it has in such a marvelous way for you and for so many artists that you work with, and that you uplift, myself included. Us being able to be on Transformers together is like such a blessing, such an honor. And the
Totally.
journey, like it is a ride, you know, it is a wild ride, like being in the studio and seeing what, you know, hearing your voice and being like, I'm connected, I know this person, we're creating together. And then to put, you know, our us in the same space, cyberspace together is such a blessing. I am
Yeah, thank you
so,
for doing that too, because I know you and I have never had like in-person group records or anything like that. So it's just thank you for making this happen, because I do think Transformers is like a really cool, special project, and all the people that have been on it have been so awesome. And you know, it's just cool also to be like a Transformers robot. Like yesterday I was doing ADR and I like got distracted and I was just like staring at it because I saw Twitch fly in as a drone and I was like, wow, that's me. That's really cool. And
yeah.
I and then they were like, okay, Kat, go ahead. I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm distracted by the fact that I got carried away that I got to be a Transformers robot. So yeah, no, we're very blessed in that sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. For those of you watching, you can catch Kat and so many things. I'll leave a little video at the end of this, like I usually do, with some more information. And just thank you so much.
Thank you, Z. Thank you for having me.
That was episode 4 of Raise the Game, featuring Kathreen Khavari, the incredible voiceover artist, storyteller, screenwriter, actor extraordinaire, someone who's going to blow up this industry and make it the world that it can be. I'm so excited to see what they're up to next. Be sure to like and subscribe to @Raise the Gain on YouTube and to @ZRInfante on Instagram to stay posted on our upcoming guests. And please like and follow Kathreen on all of the socials. We love you, Kathreen.